Ladies and gentlemen, it's 9 o'clock. I call this Sawyer County Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Ron Buckholz.
Present.
Mark Helwig.
Here.
Jeff Haney.
Here.
Marshall Savitsky. You have a quorum.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, number 4, certification of compliance with open meetings law.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Okay, number 5 is the meeting agenda has been presented. Number 6, public comment. I'm not going to go through the whole spiel of the public comment because everybody's pretty much aware of that. So we have Ms. Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, resident of the village of Birchwood, and I want to provide 2 bits of history. One has to do with law enforcement and ordinances, and the other has to do with specifically the history of the animal control ordinance. First of all, recently Wisconsin Public Radio interviewed somebody who's another one of these experts on the Northwoods gangster era. And if you don't listen to it, you can read about it. And this area has got 2 bits of history that I don't think we want to perpetuate. One was the Indian School and the other one was the gangster era. And just as an example, when Al Capone was heading up to his lodge near Couturier, he would have his men call up to the sheriff's department and say, "The boys are coming up this weekend." The sheriffs in the area would literally hold out their hands and say, "What can we do to help?" They knew that those men would bring money and payoffs, and they weren't going to risk their lives over somebody bootlegging. It was all about turning a blind eye up there, which is one of the reasons the gangsters loved it. And there's another comment about pretty much the reputation up here, do what you want as long as you're not harming anyone else. Well, we've got a lot more people up here right now. The people where people are developing to live, it's a lot denser. And so that's why we have ordinances, I believe. So Phil Neese also allowed me to say that I can use his name, and we have a shared recollection of the latest iterations of the animal control ordinance. It was updated about the time Rebecca Roker was coming on as an outside attorney, and there was a dog kennel that was coming up to be located in the town of Bass Lake. Phil's memory was that even maybe Doug Mrotek at the time was on the Bass Lake Town Board, but he wasn't able to verify that. But a lot of people were involved in writing the animal control ordinance, including Phil, because he's got his hands in most things. There was a veterinarian in Bass Lake, last name Newton, I think it was Chuck Newton. A lot of people went into drafting that because, first of all, the ordinance that Sawyer County had was not consistent with state statutes. So that was the iteration that was done, again, the time frame Rebecca Roker was first coming on. So the dog kennel was kind of a zoning issue, but then they wanted clear animal control ordinance over dog kennels. Then just even this last spring, there was an ordinance amendment about nuisance animals and nuisance animal owners that was brought to this committee and the full county board, and it was passed without much discussion at all. And it was pretty clear that it covers animals. Other parts of the older part of the ordinance clearly include cats and dogs. And if you go and do any kind of a search on other municipal ordinances, they're a little bit clearer about if they're a pet, whether a cat, a dog, or other animal, they apply. So I have to ask this committee and the full county board, why does the county continue to adopt ordinances and ordinance amendments that they don't intend to enforce? So when an animal becomes, and it's a pet and not a feral animal, when they go outside their property of their owners and they may bite or scratch or do property damage, why wouldn't you enforce any animal, whether it's a cat or a dog or a pet pig? So just want to offer that background that it was always been clear that Phil said it was always clear that the animal control ordinance intended to apply to all pet animals, not just dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right, anybody else out there want to speak on that public comment? Any hands up, Lynn? Oh, he's on a different one. Oh, all right.
Is there anyone in the virtual world that would like to speak in public comment? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, thank you. What was that? Oh, okay. All right, number 7, consider the approval of minutes of the previous Public Safety Committee meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Helwig and a second by Mr. Savitsky to approve the minutes of the last previous meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Number 8, Circuit Court. We have the judge here today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's actually warm in here. It's freezing everywhere else over here. The one day I don't have full sleeves. Everything's going well. We've got recovery court still turning out to be very successful. We had recovery court session last week, and because it was Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, I decided to be super hokey and ask everybody what they were thankful for. And one of the individuals said that he was thankful for the recovery court program. He's made a total 180. He said that last year for Thanksgiving, he was running from the law, hiding from warrants, lost his children, things like that. And now this year, he's just got his children back. He's sober, successful in his job. And I think that that's just a good reminder of what we're all doing all of this for. I would say everything's going well, but today our Spectrum outage apparently is affecting our area, and I couldn't get a court reporter, so we had to schedule court out today, which, oh darn, but everything else, good to go.
Well, that's probably a good thing because then we're blessed with you today.
Yeah. No, I was like, well, I'm going to go run over and see if they're in public safety.
All right. All right, anybody have any questions for the judge? Not? Okay, thank you. Number 9, Clerk of Courts. Marge?
The only thing I wanted to add or point out was that we have a 5-day jury trial scheduled for next week that it should take up quite a bit of time. I have to say thank you to IT and maintenance for doing such a wonderful job helping get things set up for us for those trials and helping it to go so smoothly. And then for court security, because they bring there's a lot of jurors we summon for these large number day trials, and they do due diligence on getting that through the security and keeping us safe. So I want to just say thank you to everyone for that.
Okay, thanks, Marge. Do you want to have any questions for Marge? Okay, thank you. All right, number 10, the Sheriff's Department report. Sheriff, you just want any updates on anything, or should we just go to the patrol report?
I do. I just want to fill the committee and everybody in.
Okay.
Obviously, we've had some concerning challenges in the southwestern portion of the county there with some arson fires. And I just want to let everybody know that our agency, with cooperation of the Fire Marshal's Office with DCI, which is a division of DCI under the Department of Justice, we have spent a lot of hours. We've had 10 to 15 agents regularly, daily, working with us from DCI on those fires. We've had incident command and stage out of the Village Hall in Radisson many days 24 hours a day. And we did put out a video clip working with the media. We did get some good information, but nothing to shore things up for us to move forward. We're still seeking information and working diligently, canvassing the communities and interviewing people. And I'm getting bombarded by the news media, and rightfully so, but it's always that weighing the scale of releasing enough information to minimize the concerns of the public, which they have a legitimate concern, but not jeopardizing the integrity of the investigation. And that's our primary focus, is to catch the person who's doing this, or people, depending. And we have no confirmation whether it's the same person with all of them. I mean, it's reasonable to think it probably is,
Yeah.
but we're not certain, and we want to bring the people involved to justice.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of, well, even like the business owners and the public down there that's worried that their house would be next.
Yes,
But I know everybody's reading all your stuff, and we know you guys are working hard to try to catch whoever that is, so.
thank you.
All right. Anybody have any questions for the sheriff? All right, next, go ahead, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see from the patrol report, we have increased our calls for service in November, mainly due to the hunting season and the increased number of people in our area. 3 months trends show September was 778 and October was 679. It's also a slight increase from November of 23. Last month, our deputies issued a total of 28 citations for traffic offenses, 15 written warnings, and 10 non-traffic citations. Per community maps, there have been 18 total crashes, 2 with personal injury, and no additional fatalities, bringing our total for 2024 to 312 crashes, 73 with personal injury, and 3 fatalities. I spoke before about the BOTS traffic grant. Those have finally been finalized, and we have put out a schedule for filling, as well as we had a reasonably safe gun deer season. We had, at the time of writing, 1 missing adult hunter, but we did have 2, both, however, were located. We're continuing our training also with the Axon tasers. Completed our annual certification for that just recently with the X2s. We are now expecting a shipment of new series of tasers, since the county board has approved the budget for 2025, and we'll begin deploying those when they arrive and start training.
Okay. Any questions for Lieutenant? None. All right, thank you, Lieutenant. All right, number B, jail report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our average daily population for November was 63, and that's compared to 68 from November of 2023. We're housing 15 females and 48 males through the month. Our average probation incarceration is at about 30% of our population. Our average pre-sentence incarceration is about 51% of our population, and our average sentenced inmate incarceration is about 19% of our population. So we currently have 5 on electronic monitor, and the total population on the day of the report was 70. That ends my report.
Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you. All right, number C, Communication Center and Emergency Management Report.
Morning, thank you.
Good morning.
The Communication Center was recently awarded grant funds for the fiscal year of 2025. The grant program will fund updating equipment within the Communication Center, as well as providing communication training officer training, which we've never had here before. It'll be an opportunity for all the dispatchers to become basically what the patrol has as field training officers, but they'll be certified in training other communication officers, other dispatchers in the way of doing things in dispatch. Like Lieutenant said, our call volume is up from this time last year. We're at 1387 calls for service altogether. Last year was 1331. From emergency management side, I'm working with Washburn County Emergency Management, working to coordinate and plan a training and workshop for elected officials within the county. That would be the municipalities, township, city, villages, elected officials. Working on and training on the importance of being prepared and having their emergency operations plans well drafted and in place. Working with public health emergency preparedness and exploring new ways to exercise, plans to better be prepared, and recently toured the National Weather Service in Duluth, which was not as exciting as I thought it was going to be.
Okay, any questions for Deputy Rapinski? All right. Number D, Communication System Specialist Report. Is that you?
I don't have
Okay,
any current report from Genecom.
okay. All right. Number E, Code Enforcement Specialist. Chad,
Good morning.
morning.
So in November, our dog county license was shut down so they could get prepared for the 2025 season. So the revenue is strictly just from impound fees of the dogs. And we only had 6, I believe, that came in, 2 of which we had to bring to NHS. The other 4 did get to go home to their owners. And as a reminder, the 2025 dog licensing season has started. Started on the 1st. We've had just a handful of people so far that have gotten licensed. Excuse me. And then our calls for at-large dogs have been the most popular, as usual. And then for like zoning, I'm still working with Jay on doing some letters for visits that I've already done. I just have to ask him some questions and then we can get those sent out. For public health, the environmental health side, we are working with an owner of a property where we got a complaint that they were using a pit on their property as a dump. So we're working with them to get them resources and help them get that cleared out because they seem to want to, so want to get it fixed and everything. So that's all I got.
Okay, anyone have any questions? All right, thank you. All right. Number 2 on Code Enforcement Special Appearance, Attorney Duffy, Animal Control Ordinance. Want to speak, please?
So I'm here to discuss I think there was a citation issued for a cat at large. And just to give you some history, I mean, I'm not a cat owner. I could care less about what ultimately happens. But I think when this ordinance was drafted, probably initially like 15 years ago by Sherry Shelton and myself, we were told in no uncertain terms by the county board that we do not want to have calls for cats. And in the time since then, there's not been one citation issue for a cat. I know in the city, there used to be like 30 cats that were being fed by neighbors and they were breeding and they thought they should kill them. And the Humane Society actually trapped them all, spayed them all and let them go again. And so people keep feeding them. Feeding doesn't mean you own them. There's no licenses for cats. We license dogs and you mandate when you get a license, you get vaccinations. There's no mandated license for cats. And I mean, cats are, and I don't own a cat, so I mean, I understand there's 3 kinds of cats. I mean, it's house cats that never come outside. There's cats that are both inside and outside. And then there's barn cats that never come inside. And they're all labeled as cats. And so the outside cats, I mean, short of fencing in your yard and putting a cover on it, I mean, fence keeps a dog in. Fence doesn't keep a cat in. And so if you want to enforce cat ordinances every time someone sees a cat run across the road, law enforcement can say, well, I'm going to try to pick that cat up. Well, try is a big thing. For 2, they usually don't have licenses, so you don't know who owns them. And I get in a situation where if you have a cat that's killing your poultry or causing damage, you've risen it to a different level. If the cat walks across your yard, is that something that animal control or law enforcement should be called for? Because I think you have situations where neighbors don't like neighbors. And if your cat walks across my yard, I'm calling the police. And we're going to issue a citation. And if your cat walks across my yard every day, I'm going to ask that a citation be issued every day. And the owner of that cat, again, my thought is the only thing you can do with that cat is put it down, because if it's an inside-outside cat, they're not staying inside. they're going outside, and short of putting a cat in a kennel, which I don't know if I've ever seen a cat in a kennel, unless it's a wild cat, I don't know that it's the best use of county resources to be enforcing the cat ordinance. If that's what you choose to do, my thought is we should license cats so we can mandate that they have the vaccinations and rabies shots and everything that they need. And then you've got, that whole scenario with that. So I think if cats are included in at large, it does say animals at large, which clearly includes cats. It comes to a determination of whether it's the best use of our resources and my resources in prosecuting cats. And again, because cats mostly aren't licensed, I think they're all not licensed. How do you know who owns it if you can catch it in the first place? Now, there are cats that say that's their cat, they fed them, and because you feed a cat, does that mean it's yours? It's not owned, it's not licensed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if someone said, well, that's not my cat, I just feed it because it comes around. All right, we issue a citation, you come into court and say, it's not mine. I'm going to keep feeding it, but it's not mine. Where dogs, you have a license, it says you own it. So there's difficulties in prosecuting those. I think there's difficulties in a court system. The judge isn't on this case, but I mean, proving ownership of cats, sometimes you have neighbors that share cats. You feed them sometimes, I'll feed them sometimes, and so they're a different animal, no pun intended, than dogs. And so, like I said, in 30 years, we've not had a cat citation. I know the city of Hayward hasn't had a cat citation because they just don't do it. Now, is it in the ordinance? Animal at large? A cat's an animal.
Yes.
So it can be included in there. If you want to have that stricken from the ordinance, I can change the ordinance. But I think that if you choose to go down this path, you're going to get when they talk about 1,800 calls, you could increase that by half for cat calls. And I'm not sure that they're too busy to go on a cat call, but the calls still come in. And it doesn't, I'm not belittling the fact that if someone's cat walks across your backyard, can that annoy you? Yes, I agree that it can. And you go to the owner and say, keep your cat on your own property. And if he says, I can't, you keep the cat in the house, which some cats just don't stay in the house. So, it's, the ordinance is the ordinance. It's what you guys want to do. If you want to go down that slope and you want to have animal control issue citations for every time someone calls instead of cats at large, and you want me to prosecute them, I'll prosecute them. I don't know that that's where we want to go, but that's not my call, that's your call.
I guess, Mr. Duffy, my question is, though, when this ordinance was written, why wasn't it put in the ordinance, this does not mean or concern to the cats?
Well, because I
It
think.
would have been, made this a lot easier.
Yep. And I think that there was a verbal warning from the board not to do it. Because when Sherry was coming to the board, and there was really no ordinance before that, when Sherry came to the board, it was like, look, we'll go along with this, because it kind of created a job for her. I don't think we had a full-time animal control officer before that, but it kind of created a job. And they said, if you start chasing cats and this turns into an overtime and whatever, we're not doing it. So it probably should have been excluded. But I think the understanding was always that she never wrote them and I never prosecuted them.
Okay. So my next question, well, not question, but I know at one of our public safety meetings, when we brought this up, we give Chaz the authority to do how she's seen fit to handle the cat problem.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, we get somebody's complaining about a cat, she issues a citation, and it's told that it might not be prosecuted.
Well, but there's been complaints almost every day since then too, so they want to write a citation every day. So it's not a one-time issue and gone. I mean, the complaints have continued and they want citations issued every day. So, and when I got the citation, I was like, again, back by the county board, when we sat down with that ordinance, I was told, do not do cats. And from a prosecutor standpoint, I have some discretion in saying, just like she has discretion in writing citations, I have discretion not to prosecute it. Now, the response to that is you can say, you didn't prosecute that? You're fired. We're hiring somebody else. So ultimately, it comes back to you saying, prosecute it. But because it's issued, doesn't mean I have to prosecute it unless, you say, look, in no uncertain terms, you're prosecuting every cat citation to the fullest. Take them to jury trial if you have to, prosecute them. Okay. But
So here's my suggestion then. And I don't know where these guys stand on this. I believe in this ordinance right now that we have. And if we're not going to enforce it, to put in there, rewrite in there that it does not pertain to cats. And then we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Right? Mitty? Wake up, help me.
I would agree. There's no way we can get a hold of all these cats in the county. So if we strike it out, I think it's going to be beneficial for.
Then I'll give
Everyone.
you guys a chance to talk a minute, you and Linda. So,
I think Mr. Duffy gave us a very good spiel there, explained it very well.
he did.
So I think we need to go with his, I wouldn't say recommendation, but from what he's stating, we should go with what you're saying, Ron, is just say, no, take it out of there. I mean,
Right.
like I said, we don't have the resources or, which is money, to run after every cat. And I don't know the full situation. I have not been totally read into that, so, but if the cat's just running across the yard, then I would have issue with prosecuting it just like you would. So, yeah.
When you talked about licensing cat, I brought that up here in this committee. I got laughed at, you didn't.
Well, but I probably would be if I proposed it. I didn't say propose it. I said if we're going to do the cats at large, we should license them too, because,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're picking up a cat and you don't know if it's licensed or not, or if it has rabies shots, I don't know if you guys want to pick up cats.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of feral cats out there. I mean.
Well, you can't tell
Running
feral
all
from
over. I
non-feral when they're
agree
out
with that
running.
part of it, but- So Andy, what would we have, or Mr. Duffy, how do we have to do with this ordinance to put that in there?
Well, if you asked me to change the ordinance, I would modify the ordinance and send it back to you for the committee approval and the county board approval.
Is that what we want? I think that's what we should, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I agree with that. Are we gonna still keep in there, like for horses or, other animals?
Well, I think the one thing about horses and cows is that they stay in fences usually. And if they're at large and you hit them with a car, if you hit a cat, the cat dies, and that's awful. But you hit a cow and, so, and I think that all the other animals stay. It's just, and cats are a different, every time I drive home, I see a cat. Now, it probably running from its house to another house or whatever, and I'm okay with that. It's just, it seems to be a slippery slope, and I feel for Mr., for the individual that has issues with the cat, and it's awful, but I don't know if we start down that slope, I'm not sure that where it ends.
Linda, you can talk. Yep.
Usually at these meetings, I have Dr. Phil online with me, and he does not recall that the county board ever said that this was not intended for cats. And if the time frame that Attorney Duffy is talking about is 15 years ago, there was a significant modification made since 15 years ago, and I believe it involved Rebecca Roker, and it included all animals. And going back to my earlier public comment about the ordinance amendment that you adopted this spring for nuisance animals and nuisance animal owners, I believe that was written by that Atolls law firm. So you have one firm that is writing ordinance amendments, and you're adopting them without question, and then you have another attorney saying, well, no, this is not what was intended 15 years ago, and I think you should change your ordinance. So from a public's perspective, I don't know. But to clarify beyond the hearsay, we have a situation, in most things, there are a lot of ordinances that are going unenforced in Sawyer County. A lot of them are zoning ordinances. And the answer always is that it's complaint driven. So I don't think it's the intention of the ordinance to require animal control or law enforcement to go out and pick up every stray cat. It's complaint driven. So if it's a complaint and it is established that this is not a feral cat, that this is owned by someone, which it was established, and you don't need to have a license to do that, that there are options like catios. Yeah, you don't put them in a kennel and you can't fence in a cat, but you can build a catio that allows that animal outside, which I believe is what, in this particular instance, animal control recommended to the owner. So and I just want to also add that cats can harm people. In the village of Birchwood, our village clerk went to pet a stray, feral, whatever cat, and it bit her. So now we have a catch, spay, and release program that we do in our village to address the animals and to do it humanely. And so we have some feral running around, but we try to keep the population in control. So again, you have pets who are not being properly cared for by their owners by allowing them to roam freely, which puts that animal at jeopardy. So it's responsible pet ownership as well as the potential for harm to others. Again, it's complaint driven. I ask that you do not change your ordinance and that you enforce it or not, pretty much like you do your other ordinance. It's based on complaint, not on just picking up animals that running at large. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Benjamin Kurtzwell, 16040 W West Lane. First of all, let's clarify a couple things. There are two types of cats. There are pets and there are feral cats. This cat, when I first found it in my yard, when it would sit for hours at a time under my bird feeder, had a name tag of Sam and a phone number. I called the phone number. That's how I figured out who the owner was. With the violations continued, that tag around the neck was gone. So I imagine now the tag is not there. It is someone's cat. It does not just walk through my yard. It sits there for hours under my bird feeder. I can't feed birds this whole summer. I tried working. I was here in September, I believe, talking to everyone about this. We talked about changing the ordinance then. Everyone felt the ordinance was good. I'd also ask too, how many cat violations are called in every year? I would say probably none except for this one. So again, it is complaint driven. This is a situation where I have tried to work with a neighbor. They have threatened physical harm to me. I had to turn to animal control. Animal control issues a citation. We come here September, planning, or public safety committee meeting. We all agree a citation should be issued and that the ordinance is fine the way it is. I thought that the whole issue was over. In October, I realized that this individual who had the citation against him pled not guilty. So I went to the October court date. It got rescheduled. I had my spider sense, as they say, was tingling. So I emailed Andy Alvarado and Ron Buckholz and Ron Kingsley and asked them, did anyone instruct Attorney Duffy to try to dismiss this case? No, they assured me that his job was to prosecute. However, on November 4th, at the court hearing, Attorney Duffy shows up in front of Judge Isham's court and asked to dismiss the case. He said he talked to the defendant and decided to dismiss it. And I believe his statement there was he didn't think the intention of the people who wrote the ordinance was to deal with cats. Now, when I'm asking, after that happened, the cats start showing up in my yard again in October and November. I asked Chaz, what is going on? It seemed to me that as soon as I also made an open records request. And I found out back in October, it seemed like Mr. Alvarado and Chaz knew the case was going to be dismissed. But they said they hadn't talked to Attorney Duffy. So it seems at every level here, whether it come to the citation I had to come here in September or now, there seems to be a concerted effort to make sure that this violator of the animal control ordinance does not have to pay their fine. Whether it's not issuing a citation for further violations or to have Attorney Duffy dismiss it in court. If you guys want to change the ordinance, that's fine. That was what you thought about in September. But you have to enforce the ordinance as it is on the books now. And to dismiss this case because you're talking about changing the ordinance, that's not right. I believe that this is clear in the law. I wish this whole situation would be over. I don't want the cat in my yard. I don't want to be calling animal control and be ridiculed every time I come to a county board meeting or to a committee meeting. But the idea that Attorney Duffy can also pick and choose, which he is not the DA. He is an agent of the county. He is an employee of the county. You guys issue citations, he goes prosecutes them. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, again, if you guys want to change the ordinance and if you change your minds in September, that's your prerogative. But it was just done less than a year ago, and there seemed to be no issues. Now, if I'm the only person who's ever called for a cat violation, then it should be enforced because you guys aren't getting bombarded with them. And no one's talking about rounding up feral cats. We're talking about a pet. And if you can't control an animal of yours, you probably shouldn't be allowed to own one. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say, what can I do if I have a cat that doesn't want to stay inside? I mean, you have to be a responsible pet owner is what you have to be. So please, do not change the ordinance. It's fine the way it is. And instruct Attorney Duffy to prosecute this case. Because that's what justice looks like here instead of changing the ordinance. Thank you.
Andy, what do you think how we should handle this? We're gonna be damned if we do and we're gonna be damned if we don't. On this. I understand what Ben's saying, and in this animal ordinance, a cat is an animal. I understand that. And this is the ordinance on the book right now. And Chaz has issued a citation for an animal at large. It went before Judge Isham. I don't know the whole thing about it. I wished I would have sat in on it, but I didn't. I guess I'm kind of confused on where we should go with this.
Can I just?
Yes, you can.
When I was in court with Judge Isham, I did not ask to dismiss it, because if I asked to dismiss it, I think she'd have dismissed it. I said what I was told years ago, and I told you what I was told. I said, I want to get back in front of the committee and find out what the direction is. So, I mean, and with regards to cases, I'm the prosecutor on zoning citations and animal control citations and then other county citations. And I usually don't, I mean, those get settled or compromised all the time. If you have 4 tickets and you plead to 2, I mean, I'm not such that if I want to prosecute, go after 2 tickets and dismiss 2, I mean, just like the district attorney does. And that's part of my job. And I don't come to you guys to ask you about that. I try to do what's best for the county. I did say to the judge that we were told in certain terms years ago not to prosecute cats. But I didn't move to dismiss it. I said, I'm going to wait, and we moved it to January, and I said, we're going to come to this meeting. So just so you're clear on that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I feel I also need to say that I'm no longer the judge on this case. The way the cases are processed, just for everybody's information, when citations come in, they're randomly assigned to either one of myself or Judge Yackel. Usually when it's a citation, it comes in for its regular intake. 99% of the time people don't show up, and it just goes on as a default judgment. In this case, somebody must have written in or came and entered a not guilty plea, and then it ended up in court in front of me. When I saw Mr. Kurzweil, I was like, oh, that's this case. And then we had to reset it, and I took myself off of it because of that and because of my information that I gather from this hearings, from these committees. So just felt like I needed to say that.
All right, Mr. Hellwig.
Well, with the current situation, if the individual keeps getting citations and doesn't pay them and doesn't fix the situation with the cat, what is our recourse then? I mean, it doesn't seem like they're really. But I mean, so how many citations do we give them before we go to the next level, I guess?
I mean, people that have assets you pay because they don't want to try to understand the property. You're trying to refinance it by a car or get an extra debt credit. So
I'm guessing this individual that has the cat is thinking this is just frivolous and why are we doing this? And Mr. Kurtzwell, he doesn't want the cat there, so.
Well, not only that, but if you don't, and, you know, from Mr. Kurzweil's perspective, I'm sure that what it is that if you don't enforce it now, then there's no deterrence for changing the behavior of the animal. So I'm sure that that's what the issue is, not necessarily more of a, I want him to pay, but more of a, he needs to have some deterrent factor in to stop the animal's behavior. And that's probably more what the driving force is. So what I would say just on the issue is if it's going to be a modification to the ordinance, which maybe it needs to be, maybe we didn't consider, by we, I mean y'all, didn't consider, you know, that each individual animal would need to be teased out in this ordinance rather than just saying animals.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. You know, you write an ordinance and then you see how it plays out. And if adjustments need to be made, it's a living document. You can make those adjustments. And if you want to do that, fine. I think what their argument is, though, is that at the time that these incidents were happening, this was the ordinance. So this is the ordinance that should be enforced, regardless of whether you change it or not. And just I feel like Mr. Kurzweil, and I'm sorry, I missed your name there, but you make very excellent points. I think you make very excellent points. I think Attorney Duffy makes very excellent points. That this is an issue that is huge right now, but it could be resolved relatively easily, right? You can enforce or ask to enforce this citation and amend the ordinance so that it doesn't happen again. You can do both things. But also just to defend Attorney Duffy, he is like a DA as a prosecutor. He does have discretion. He can choose what he wants to prosecute and what he does not. And he makes those decisions because he considers what's in the best interest of the county. That's why he's hired to do that. Just like the DA and just like the judge, we all have, and just like officers, we all have discretion. So while there are these laws and while there are these ordinances, there are several levels of discretion before it actually comes to a resolution.
Judge, I totally agree with you. And the same thing when you say discretion, we all as landowners have discretion. All right, I'll let it slide this time. And then it happens again. Hey, I let it slide last time. But you know, how many times did he let it slide? We don't know. And I think something needs to be resolved here with the individual. I mean, to me, it almost is like he's, you know, gonna look nose to him, what do you want to say? And, you know, hey, I don't care. And that can't be the way that you just can't say, I don't care and walk away from it.
So Ron, we don't really have anything to say with the current court process right now. We hired Duffy to do what he's doing and it's in his hands for his discretion. I don't think this board has anything we can say about this case currently. But if we're gonna, I think we should strike out the cat thing and the animal ordinance just for future reference, even though I think kind of set a bad precedence already that we're gonna let this one go by and we're gonna prosecute it. But I think that we can move forward and get off this topic probably and just have Attorney Duffy rewrite the ordinance and strike out the cat clause if that's what you guys want to agree with. And then I don't think any of us, four of us, can say anything about what's currently going on through the law office, correct?
Right, I mean, that should be between Mr. Duffy and Chaz, or maybe even Andy. I got one suggestion. Go pick that friggin' cat up. Take it for a long ride. But don't take it in my area. So, sorry, Sheriff. Go ahead. Come up here to the mic.
Here's my other concern. If you guys want to change the ordinance and not deal with cats, that's fine. What am I to do or a property owner to do now if we have 1, 2, or 3 cats? I've been told that if I take matters in my own hand, I will be charged. So if you guys are going to write an ordinance to say, you know what, we don't mind that feral cats are destroying the birds and wildlife of our Northwoods, and there's nothing we're going to do about it, then we got to give the property owners a chance to defend their property. So I would caution that if you just take cats out, then you're gonna have a problem where feral cats and pets are going to be running everywhere. And there's nothing anyone can do. Now, if that's what you guys want, think about that, okay? So, again, I could talk to, I should contact like the birding society, because I wonder how they would feel about all this. Because again, feral cats do a lot of damage to the bird populations in the North Woods, and pet cats do the same to people let them outside. So if you're going to make sure that cats are not enforceable, then write something in there that gives the property owners the authority to deal with a cat on their property. You're gonna have to deal with that too, Marshall. Because I mean, then otherwise a property owner is held at the mercy of someone's pet cats or feral cats. There's nothing we can do. They can just be on our property and, well, I can't kill them. I can't call anyone. Those cats have more rights than I do on my own property. That's not America either. So think about that, please.
Is that cat still coming in your yard?
It came in October on 4 different occasions. Once, it's just sitting in front of my door or by my bird feeder. And then it came, so that was why I've contacted Chaz about those October violations. And then it showed up once in November. So again, in September, when I came here in September, I thought the whole thing was over. The violations persisted, so it's been 5 or 6 times since October and November. I did contact Animal Control again about another citation. The response I get from Animal Control and from Andy Alvarado is that Attorney Duffy is in charge of who issues the next citation for this. Well, that's what you told me, Andy. And that's where I have some questions here too, so it seems to me there was not going to be a second citation issued because there is the impression from Animal Control and Andy that this is the first one's going to be dismissed anyway. So why issue a second one? I just think if you're going to change it, that's fine. Just give the property owners a route to protect their property then from feral cats or pet cats. And then it's on us, the property owners, to deal with it. That'd be great. But you have to give us a route to deal with it. Thank you.
What happens if a fox comes on your land?
It's a wild animal. It's a wild animal. I have rabbits and foxes. I have bobcats. Those are wild animals.
L&M sells live traps. That's what I did, or I borrowed one from Sherry Shelton.
You have things to do.
It's,
Sam, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you were asked a while ago, like, what we should do. I mean, I think what's that?
No, go ahead, Andy.
No, I think you're finding out, like we had talked about before and today, like the slippery slope of dealing with cats. Wild animals, there's ways to deal with them. There's things property owners can do with cats. I mean, you have unlimited ways to harass them. I mean, I'm not going to suggest start killing cats in your property, but there's live traps, there's other harassment tools. I mean,
So can I legally live trap someone else's pet?
it's on your property, and that's where even the whole designation of a pet is.
Well, I know, but if someone's dog or cat comes on my property and I set a live trap and catch it, I mean, and then I haul it away somewhere, is that legal? Because they're going to say I just kidnapped their pet.
Well,
I'm just saying, if there's some clear guidance for.
saying, Ben, and this could go on forever.
So I guess anyway, I mean, I think the revisions to the ordinance are in our best interest. I think there's a difference between a cat walking through the yard and a cat that, we've had cats, vicious cats or cats that bite, and that's a health issue. But I think there's other areas in the ordinance that animal control can use to address that. So from that standpoint, and I guess I've talked to some other counties, there are counties in the region that actually have animal shelters that deal with cats, but for the most part, anybody else does not deal with cats unless there's like a bite or something like that. But so that's the ordinance side. Specific to this case, I guess I'd leave it up to them. I think it's a legal proceeding. Attorney Duffy probably knows. I mean, there's any number of defenses that they're going to contest with, or how that's going to be presented, and let them see that out the way they see fit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Marshall just said something like, there's no ownership of a cat. I think we can all agree with that one, because there's no licensing of a cat, so there's really no ownership of a cat. You can put collar on it saying Sammy all you want, but yet when it comes down to the law, as far as I understand, there isn't any ownership. So if You either do a live trap and pick it off your property. I gotta watch how I'm speaking, of course, I don't wanna, but spray it with water. There's, people are saying around the table here, there's things you can do besides contact animal control, and that's why like Mr. Duffy said, in 30 years, nobody's brought a cat issue forward, because I'm sure they've done something. They go out there, go away, shoot with a BB gun, shoot around it, get.
I mean, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I can't go outside for 3 hours straight and try to shoot a cat off the yard and put it back on. I mean, I guess I have so many animals on my property, like rabbits and squirrels, I don't know. But I mean, and how can I so in the middle of the area, my yard, take a picture, call them real quick.
Yeah, one last thing I'm gonna say is Mr. Duffy has been authorized to make those decisions. And if he decides not to go forward with this case, with the citation, it's no different than the hundreds of other cases he's decided not to go forward with. It's not a personal thing, but he may just simply decide there's no reason to go forward with this and go to trial or whatever. And I'm just stating, the fact is, he has that discretion. Yes, he does, sir. The judge just stated that fact. All right, we're done.
Now, we're gonna end this here very shortly. And I know Mr. Duffy said when the ordinance was wrote, they were asked about cats, and he was told by the county board or whoever not to put cats in there. My suggestion, and listening to you guys, that we should rewrite this ordinance and omit cats from that, pertaining to cats in that ordinance. That way, we don't have to listen to it. Chaz is not gonna get called all over Sawyer County for this and that. And I believe that's the way we should go with this. You guys agree?
Yes.
Agreed. And the current one is up to Mr. Duffy.
Yeah, and Mr. Duffy is representing the county, and I believe that's the way it should be handled.
It's on the agenda as a discussion and possible action, so if you want to make a motion to direct him to rewrite the ordinance, I think that'd be a good
Okay.
thing.
I would like to make a motion to have Mr. Duffy change our current ordinance
Oh, yeah.
to, not to include cats.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Hellwig and a second by Mr. Haney to approve Attorney Duffy to rewrite the animal control ordinance pertaining not to include cats.
And just to be clear, he's going to propose amendments to it. It'll come back to you for a decision and then to the county
Right,
board
and
when
the
you approve
county
it.
board.
Yes.
Okay,
And our current one is still in place until we sign that one, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's in Mr. Duffy's hands,
Well, I'd say,
correct?
it is and it isn't. I mean, code enforcement has discretion as well, just like our officers do in the field to make those decisions
Oh, yeah, yeah.
before they write citations.
okay. And like I say, we give Chaz the discretion to use the discretion to how to handle it. And to me, for right now, that still stands, but just, I guess this is the only way I can see and this committee can see is to rewrite this ordinance to eliminate cats out of that ordinance, and we can move on.
I agree.
I couldn't help but giggle when you were saying the cat calls, though. That was all these cat calls, because you know what the cat call is.
Wow.
Also, as another just like a funny story, we had a dog at large citation, and like I said, they come in. Everybody shows up at the same time for intake, and I just take them, and they came with the dog. I assumed it was Service animal, yes. And then when I saw what the case was, it was a dog at large citation. It was so hard for me to hold back. Can you put the microphone in front of the defendant, please? Like, I would like the dog to answer whether or not he's guilty.
Okay,
Yeah, moving on.
so when does this come before the judge again, Mr. Duff?
Out of town, Judge, January.
January, is there a date? Oh,
I think it's the 6th or 10th or something like that.
okay,
Probably a judge during my Zoom.
okay. All right. Linda, you want something to say before we get out of here? Go ahead, Sheriff.
I'd just like to say, reminding the committee here and going to probably the full board for the ultimate changes, you know, what the decision you make is going to be precedent setting in the future. And as well, in all fairness, we all believe in due process. You know, we listen to a lot of testimony and it's from one side, not both sides. And that's where I think it's good to be dependent on the court process, because during that trial or hearing, they're going to hear it from both sides and you're only hearing it from one side for the best outcome. And I don't know the details of this case, but just from experience of 41 years of law enforcement, everybody should be entitled to their side as well.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, we're gonna move on here. Number 11, Child Support Department. Oh, no. I'm gonna read that again, or Lynn, read it back and then we'll do the vote.
A motion was made by Mr. Helwig to have Attorney Duffy edit the ordinance to not include cats and bring it back to committee for any further action. Second by Mr. Haney.
Okay, all right. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. All right, now number 11, Child Support Department. Thank you for waiting. Sorry.
I did a written report, and I don't know if anyone has any questions. I did want to highlight the last paragraph, that we are getting a lot more paternity cases with undocumented, at least one of the parties in the case is an undocumented immigrant. And when we send the paperwork out to the mom, there is a mailer page that automatically prints, indicating if they need documents in an alternate language, they can request that. We just don't get any cooperation on these cases at all. 90% of the time, it's because they're an intact family. Maybe they don't understand. You know, all we really want is a name on the birth certificate. If they're an intact family, we aren't pursuing child support. We just need, it's very important to get the dad's name on the birth certificate. So that's, and I think a lot of counties are dealing with that right now.
I wonder if you could get, if we could maybe somehow get that in front of the court, because we have access to interpreters. So perhaps if we could have, I mean, even if it was called something rather than a paternity hearing, maybe, if we could have some type of court involvement, then we could use our interpreters to help in that process. But that's just a suggestion.
We would need to get the custodial parents served.
Well, what if he can't prove that there's was an intact family? I think that's what the phrase was, intact family. Is there anything that you guys can do to, you know, it's, because that's what, if I read correctly, it seems like there's an issue with proving, or these men or individuals, they don't put their name on the birth certificate, so then you really don't know if it's a, well, yeah, like you say, well, yes, I have a husband at home, but you don't
We
know
do
that.
postal verifies, and if the postal verify comes back that the alleged father is living at the mother's address, we'll notify economic support right away, and then they'll do a fraud. And we also can do what's called a non-co-op, where we'll cut the benefits. It'll never affect the child's benefits. The child will continue to get WIC or whatever the child needs. The child's benefits will never get cut, but mom's will get cut. She won't get food stamps. She has to cooperate if she's going to receive state assistance.
Thank you. And I'm glad we had questions for you since you stayed.
I like cats.
I don't, I have a catio, actually. My cats get to go outside. Their little catio.
All right. All right, have any more questions? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck, Judge. Yep. All right. Number 12, emergency services. Brummel, you're up.
All right. As you can see that our run volume is up from last year. Pretty significantly. We've been able to cut it. Been able to cover 99% of our county so far without any issues or having to call out yet for any help. I gave you a little rundown of what we normally see throughout the year, right there. The one thing I want to highlight is the calls for anxiety. I don't want to put like, ages and stuff in there due to like possible HIPAA complaints, but we are seeing a rise in younger people calling for anxiety or families calling for anxiety. I have a belief that because vaping right now in school, like vaping right now is just unreal in people under the age of 18 right now, and the availability for them to get Delta 8, I think that has a lot to do with it. And also another problem with Delta 8, which is like a derivative of THC, it also leads to abdominal issues because that THC is one of the main causes of Crohn's disease and stuff like that for your abdomen. So it's one thing that I was kind of highlighting as one of those things for this year coming up January. I'm going to start focusing on vaping in schools and make it kind of a priority that I'm going to keep track of and keep an eye on it because it affects everybody. I mean, when I was teaching the EMR class, I was catching kids with vapes of all social economic.
They vape in high school all the time,
Yeah,
from
it's,
what I understand.
and it's crazy. And well, I got other things to talk about the high school, but I've had Jim Onerheim, he's been my community outreach. He's been going out to all the resorts and all the churches and stuff. We've been doing CPR classes, getting them the AEDs that would match to our monitors. So we don't have to like rip pads off and stuff. So he's been teaching AEDs. He's been having them buy the AEDs that the officers have in there. So there's no like question, we can just hook up and go. We've had some more saves than we've ever had. So we're doing really, really good. We're thinking, and it's not my idea. I actually was talking with Marshall about this of maybe doing some type of grant funding for the businesses around here where the ambulance or the county would front some money for these AEDs, and that they would be responsible for the maintenance of it, but it would all match what I have in the ambulance. So, and then we would do the training and all that kind of stuff, and I'd be able to have the supplies so that when people need, because one of the biggest things that we found out when we go check all these AEDs for people is we've had them some from 1999 to like one of the first ones. We've had pads that have been decades out of service, people that had AEDs that were very proud of that they had AEDs, but the batteries probably haven't worked in a decade. And as some of the people have found out, AEDs take a specific battery and a specific brand of battery, because you could get the same size battery, but if it's not the right brand, it's not going to work. And why? You guys can think of that. But like I said, Marshall kind of reached out to me. I thought that was a great idea. It's something I would definitely support. The other thing that we've been doing is John from Winter was talking about an EMR course in Winter. We've also done one in Hayward. So I've actually reached out to Winter. I haven't got a call back yet, but I have got a call back from Hayward. We're looking at putting that together. A lot of my people have now become what's called an instructor 2 through the state, which is the highest level instructor you can do to teach EMS. And they would have to be working through college. So I'm working with Northwood Tech and LCO College to get them together so we can teach these EMR courses. The county wouldn't be paying for the instructors. We just give them the instructors. The school would be paying for the instructor to go teach it. And as that goes on, I'll probably know because they're setting up their next year's schedules for schools in January. So I want to make sure that we get ahead of it and I can get that. I think that's going to be a really great skill because these people coming out of high school can then go to the fire departments, be EMRs and stuff, and then maybe residually, they get their basics and then they come to us and we can fill some gaps there. We completed the FAP grant. So that is basically a yearly grant we get. It's like $10,000 plus the 32 cents per the population of the county. So whenever we get that money, that might be something I could allocate for that grant that we talked about or some more community stuff through the ambulance. In trying to address some of the run volume issues or some of the response times, we've built a fourth room and we're looking at putting 2 full-time 24-hour in Hayward, two crews in Hayward to run 24 hours. Because one of the things that we've seen that would increase our response time is because Hayward is like 80% of our calls, the town of Hayward and the city of Hayward, at least 50% of them. They get tied up on some of those calls in there, and then by the time that they clear the hospital, it kind of extends our runtime. It's not long enough to call an outside service to come in, but it does increase that runtime. So if we can have 2 crews there, one going out, and on those majority of our calls, it leaves one open to go on the Round Lake, Edgewater, Spider Lake area calls, and even sometimes on Clam Lake. Other than that, that's what I got.
You got a question?
I have a couple.
All right, go ahead.
With the EMR, is that easier to become an EMT?
Oh, yeah, it's like the first part of EMT. And so you basically, if you wanted to become an EMT basic, you would sign up for an EMT basic class and only have to do the last part of the EMT basic class.
Now you're talking about another crew on full-time,
Yep.
24/7. Is that budgeted?
Well, so what we have right now is we have 3/4 of that because we have what's called the power truck, right? Where we have a medic that comes in, and so we run 2 full-time crews from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, Monday through Friday, right? Or Monday through Saturday, if the staffing is available. I mean, so we are staffed for that. So what I'm adding is the night shift we're gonna offset it a little bit, but it's gonna be 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and then there's gonna be a nighttime shift at 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And we'd be utilizing a line that we already have, but there is gonna be, and there might be an increase, I'm not 100% sure, but we're utilizing the line because we do 36-hour shifts anyway. And sometimes our 36 hours, we have an extra person that goes down to Ojibwa. And we'd be taking that person and bringing them up to Hayward, right? So there'll be 2 people down in Ojibwa, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then there'll be 4 people in Hayward, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, because we're not gonna put in Sunday.
And you have the people for all that?
Oh, we are actually, we've hired on a bunch of new people. We have a couple classes where I have 4 paramedics that are graduating. So, and they come from what we already have. So these are people that I already have, plus I've gained another person.
And then,
And
I'm sorry.
Oh.
You're so-
so, and that's basically, and I've been working with Andy. I mean, before, we're looking at it. I don't know if it's a budget neutral or budget increase, but we've been looking at it and working with Andy. We're just trying to cover any holes that we might have.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna can I jump in to, before you move on?
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe just an easier way to explain part of the budget issue is that before with the power truck, a lot of, when he talks about lines, that's the number of people.
Authorized.
Yes, thank you. So you understand that. So a lot of times we were running rigs with 3 people on them. So rather than having like three-person crew in Ojibwa and a 3-person crew in Hayward, we're gonna have 2, 2, and 2. So the staffing is somewhat neutralized from that. And then when I was shaking my head about having enough staff, that's been our biggest struggle to do this, move ahead. And I'll get to the item C is the same thing, where we've had a number of our paramedic lines open. So that's why we, a year and a half ago, with some of those grant funds, have put some of our people into the paramedic program. Because this is not a Sawyer County issue, this is statewide, regional issue. There's just not enough EMTs and paramedics to go around, especially paramedics. So it's hard to recruit in unless you're just stealing from somebody else. And then we've lost some to other services. So we're hopeful that we've got some people that are AEMTs and an EMT that'll become paramedics for us, and it'll be easier to fill their AEMT lines with, there's more of those than there are paramedics. So it's all key to getting us fully staffed though to make this work.
Yeah, and Andy sent me some information too, which I did some follow-up on, and of a place that's still hurting for paramedics, but they're able to do some things. And I've been talking with them for a while now, and they do their own in-house, or they sponsor a lot of paramedics, and that's how they keep their people up, is by keeping the education in-house, or they support the people that they have. So I've been kind of talking with them and working with them on that.
So, all right. So one of my questions I've got for you, Mr. Fremmel, is I didn't hear you mention anything about response times to Stone Lake or Sand Lake area.
Well, so when I looked at response times and stuff, they don't start to increase until you get past Signer on that side of the county. So, Signer, Edgewater, Oxbow, I mean, those are 20+ minute response times even from Ojibwa, but this side of the county, the Round Lake side, you got Clam Lake, and Tews Road. If everybody's been down Tews Road, there's a very big vacation population on the end of it, and it's a very long and windy road, and you cannot drive 1033 down that road. So.
Okay, and then I was brought to my attention that sometimes there's a response time to Sand Lake, an hour and a half. Where's this ambulance coming from?
I looked up the response times, and I have not seen an hour and a half response time on any of them.
Okay.
So I can pull them up. I can look at what they are. The longest response times I've had are over an hour, but the reason they're an hour is because they're a standby. So if we get called for a standby, that means we go en route, and then we get to our standby location, and until law enforcement clears us to come there, and it could be for any number of reasons, right? Then that considers us on scene. So then all of a sudden now we have a long, hour and a half, 2 hour. When they're on a SWAT standby, I have one that's over 6 hours. So, that's why your response times could look really long, and I have to look at every run that's long like that and the reason why. And it could even be that they're just clearing a domestic, right? And sometimes they have to settle that scene down before they can allow us on there. And people get upset about that, but that's what it is.
Andy?
Yeah, and this is something, the response times is something John and I have been talking about a lot, how to focus in on that. And I'll just say, one, we're pulling, with the dispatch's help, pulling reports out of the CAD month by month. Nicole's people have been giving me those as they can pull them and kind of organize them. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to get it to spit out a call and a response time. Like they spit out a call and it shows me the dispatch time, shows me when the ambulance left, said, radioed in that they're leaving, radios in when they're on the scene, radios in when they're leaving the scene. So you almost have to go call by call and manually pull out each of those times. So we're working through it, but I'll agree with John. There are, when they're on standbys or you see some of those in there. But the longest responses I've seen, like actually, and don't hold me to this because I'm only maybe halfway through the year of looking at it, is maybe 40 minutes. And that's like when there's a call in the south or a call in the north, like the Ojibwa ambulance is already on a call or gone, and Hayward has to respond, or vice versa, when Hayward's been gone and Ojibwa has to come up to Round Lake, it's that long. If you just went through the system and said average out call response time, it's probably gonna be 15 minutes across the county because you have half of our calls in the city or the town, which are 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
you have some that are longer. But we've heard, like what you just said, anecdotally, people say Sand Lake an hour and a half,
Yeah.
an hour out to Spider Lake, and I'm just not
And-
finding those calls now. I guess if I'm the one waiting for the ambulance, a half hour might feel like an hour, but
Some
Yeah.
people exaggerate.
we,
Well-
if you hear those, give us the call, like when was the call?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can pull up the radio traffic and.
It was just
follow
brought
up
to
on
my
that.
attention and, I never heard nothing about it until.
I don't want to discount
And-
those comments. We
Right,
want to
right,
follow up
right.
and figure out
I said I
why.
would follow up with it and see. And then, Mark, did you have something you wanted to say before I?
Well, I was, I'll
Turn
bring
the
it
mic.
up.
Okay,
I'll
all
bring
right. Andy, are you done?
I'm just waiting for item
Okay, I
C.
got one. Is that ambulance in Exlin now?
Well, we're trying to bring it down there, but they had a meeting and half of them want it down there and half of them don't.
We'll put the thing back in Stone Lake.
I could, but the rig that I have available for that is too big for the Stone Lake rig, for the Stone Lake, garage.
Switch it with someone.
Well,
I mean, it's.
So like this time, like right now, the ambulances that are in the stations, right, are the ones that are, we'll just say more fuel efficient, and they're running more often, so I have to go through. The ones that stay, like I have one in Round Lake right now. It's it's one of our big trucks because it fits there really nicely. And the big truck, not everybody likes to drive, for one, and number two, it's a big 4x4 truck we like to use during the winter time when it's really bad weather. And that's the same truck I have available to put into another station right now, because those big trucks, they are nice as they are, but when they go down for maintenance, they're a lot more expensive to fix. So the more miles I put on those big trucks, the more maintenance I have to do on them. So where these littler ones, they're gas powered, they're cheaper to run, and they're cheaper to maintain, that I have in the main stations going out right now.
So I thought that one that was going to Exlin was from Stone Lake.
Though so the ones that I put out, right, it doesn't matter, the Stone Lake one used to be one of the old ones that we got rid of. And then we replaced it with what's the brand new one that we have. And then we kept the two big Ford Series trucks because during really bad weather, disaster, like during the snowstorms and stuff, that's what was used to go and give people oxygen and pull people out, that's the ones. So I want them in the county, but we don't use them like, because if they go to one of the main stations, I'm going to be putting 100 miles or 100,000 miles in 6 months on them. Well, that's a lot of maintenance. And we've already replaced the 4-wheel drive once in one of them. And to fix any major issues with those big trucks, I could buy a brand new ambulance with. So we kind of try to use them only for PR stuff. If there's multiple calls and responders can get them, try not to put them on transfers. We don't want to put a lot of miles on them, but I can't be at the garage every day to tell people, don't use that truck,
I can keep working with John to get a physical rig back in Stone Lake, but the underlying problem, I would just say with some of our issues is still back to staffing.
Right.
We're going through the calls, you still, in Stone Lake hasn't had a rig there, but going back even to last year, there's not a lot of time, Stone Lake and Round Lake are not showing up as taking a lot of calls, and that's because there's not staff available to be called out when there's calls in that area. And so I think we need to figure out an answer to that. We just don't, And I don't know if it's just the nature of people. Well, I think every place is experiencing difficulty with their volunteer services. But as the county's gotten deeper into the full-time staffing at our two bases, we continue to lose more of the part-time or the volunteers that used to be, would say, hey, you're available. We have 2 people in Stone Lake available to take calls if there's a call, or Round Lake, and we don't have that.
No, and
Yeah, I know
Not
there was,
consistently.
I knew there was an issue with staffing in Stone Lake, but,
yeah, there's most of these part-time like volunteer ambulances. They've either partnered with big ambulance services or they're basically full-time now. You know, they're offering full-time wages, you know, even though they still list them as volunteer, you know, they're hiring full-time people. I mean, Barnes hires someone right now to sit up there Monday through Friday during the daytimes. So they got coverage during the day, and then they have their volunteers work because, you know, when they come home at night, they run as a total volunteer service at night. Ladysmith, Russ County is kind of the same way. They have a station, they pay people kind of more full-time. So, because it's just hard to get volunteers nowadays. It's kind of one of the reasons why I'm pushing really hard for the EMR program, see if we can build this back up. You know,
so if that ambulance ended up in Excellent, how would that get paged out?
I would still it'd be Unit 5, you know, it wouldn't change the nomenclature of it, and I would have to sit with Nicole and see if there's anything special she would have to.
Are you
do
asking
for-
about geography?
Yeah,
Like when it would get called, or?
Yeah, how they would get called.
well, it would be anytime Excellent First Responders, they would call Unit 5 Excellent First Responders, right?
Okay.
And that's actually on my list to do is call Dave today and see what went on with that meeting that they had. And, you know, because I had a couple people that attended one of their meetings and they came back to me and said, Dad, you're not as unified down there as you thought. So,
Well, anyway, I mean, if it was in Excellent, it would be a little closer to Sand Lake and Stone Lake.
Yep.
But I would think if you can't get it there, I would see somehow about getting one back in Stone Lake area.
yeah,
I mean,
which is fine and stuff, but if I don't have people to
I
jump on it,
understand
it's
that,
just
but
gonna sit there.
Maybe we gotta do something to get more people into our program.
Yep, exactly. That's,
And I know that's a money thing, but, and
Well,
I know
which-
you guys are looking at that.
yep, and that's why we're trying to partner with the EMR. If we can get the young people, from the EMR programs from the winter, and if we can do Hayward and LCO schools, and we just all team with them and we just start getting them all on board, maybe it's something that's worth investing in. I think it is, so.
Anyway, I just throwing things out there. I know you and Andy are working on
Yeah.
stuff and so, all
Let's go-
right.
Let's go to C, we're gonna have the same conversation.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andy.
So C is on here. Again, it's been hard to get to this conversation, so that's why, I don't want to have it without having the data. That's why we've been looking at the response times and call volumes. There is a big push from the Round Lake area. As you know, Round Lake offered us land. The town of Round Lake offered us land to build a full-time base out there. And so, and then I sent an email before the meeting to all of you of all the emails I got this last month from individual citizens in that area for you to read through, as well as a letter that I got yesterday from the towns of Spider Lake, Round Lake, Hunter, and Hayward.
I have
Asking,
that letter too.
okay, asking for a full-time base out in Round Lake. John and I have talked about it, as part of I don't think it's an answer that will make anybody satisfied, but part of the reason that we were moving towards a second full-time rig in Hayward, so is that if there was already a call in Hayward and there was a call in this region, Ojibwa wouldn't have to come up. Hayward would have a second rig to respond to, which is shorter. But I've talked to our county board members, Kay and John, about being a part of a meeting, like more of a small meeting with the stakeholders to hear their concerns, lay out what we have thus far, and get that done this month. It's just not going to be an easy conversation. I mean, I think when you're talking about this, there's no crystal clear answers. It is money. No easy fix, because you look at the amount of runs on what we have out in and I'm not sure why Hayward signed on to the letter. They're really well served by the ambulance here in Hayward. But if you took it, Hunter has 71 calls this year. Spider Lake is 43 and Round Lake is 51. So it's less than 10% of our overall call volume is in those areas. And I get it. If you're the one that needs the ambulance, you want it as close as it can be. But if there's, two reasonable alternatives. One is that we could post the second rig in Hayward out in that region or put it in we have a day facility out there already.
Yep.
We could have the crew there, but realistically, to be honest, because we have half of our calls in the city or the town, every time that ambulance is on a call, we'd probably pull the ambulance from out there into here to be closer to these calls, so it wouldn't even be out there. The other option would be to add a full-time, another, 8 lines of employees to staff up another ambulance, and that's $750,000 for wages. And then you got to add in another ambulance and whatever cost you have to maintain a full-time base. And honest, the emails you're going to read, I'll say 2 things. One, very polite, very thoughtful, this is our concern, this is why, and we're willing to pay for it.
The building?
Well, what the residents are saying, if it's an increase in taxes, in order for us to have an ambulance in our township, we're willing to pay more taxes for that, is what they're saying.
Oh, okay.
So they understand there's a cost increase. It's kind of a never-ending thing too, and I just think when we have this conversation, you're gonna hear the people in Edgewater saying, we're already paying for another service, why don't you take care of us? And we'll never be able to put an ambulance, well, we're not never, depends how much you want to do, but regardless of where our bases are, there's always going to be somebody that has the longest response time.
Right.
If you live in Connors Lake, in that area of the county, it's a long ways away for everybody to get there. And so you're trying to put a price on people's health and lives, which is not fair. I mean, if you look at, like John referenced, ambulance coverage in other counties, if it was strictly based on population, we have enough rigs, but we also have to base it on geography and response time. I mean, Washburn County often is served by 1 ambulance, the entire county, maybe 2. Russ County has a full-time base in Ladysmith that is available to serve the county the whole time, because a lot of times their volunteer bases aren't up and running. Bayfield County is going through what Surrey County did years ago. They're looking at going to a countywide service because so many of their volunteer programs are unable to sustain themselves. So we'll go out there and meet with the people out there and start the conversation, but it's probably not going to be easy. In the email I sent out, I scanned in all the letters, so you have those for your reference. I also attached the study that the county did back in 2017 that led you to establish the base in Ojibwa. That model was based off of having 2 full-time shops, bases in the south and in Hayward, but it also was contingent on, there was no third full-time base, but it was about keeping Round Lake and Stone Lake up as volunteer-driven bases. So like Ron had said, we probably, and John's trying to focus on EMR, EMTs to fill in on respondents. I sent some information to the sheriff and John yesterday. I picked up from from Bayfield that got it from somewhere else, where the sheriff's department for sure, that offers to train their deputies as EMRs. They pay for the training, they get a premium on their pay, but then they're available when they're on or off duty to respond as EMRs to calls. So I think we're gonna have to get creative. I mean, a third base to me is $1 million proposition. So there's probably a lot of things we can do that are less than $1 million to improve our service, but there's gonna be no easy answer for this. And I've said this too, like if we knew 5-6 years ago, before you built Ojibwa, that you were gonna go to 3 bases, you might have decided to put things in different spots to serve everybody.
Right. Well, I know, and I understand this Round Lake ambulance station, and it's gonna be another expense. We're trying to get radio communication for these guys and the EMS and the fire departments. And it keeps getting pushed around. I mean, we've been on that forever, and I don't need to go very far with that. I know we need to act on it, but another thing, and I'm looking at, and I've been looking at this Veterans Center thing. Maybe we should take that $250,000 and put it somewhere here. I'm sorry.
Speaking of the radios that it's nothing on, where we at with that?
It's gotta go.
Well, when the county board debated this in October and decided not to go ahead with the public safety project,
Right.
probably at my suggestion, because this committee, we know where this committee stands.
Right.
We had it referred to the Economic Development Committee. They haven't bugged Tussle back to discuss it on Monday at the committee meeting there. Some interim discussion with Buck Tussle has been like, we know there's a desire to move ahead on the public safety part. So can we, they already have some towers. Can we get on the towers that are here currently to get the public safety project moving? And then tie it into any broadband or cell coverage later next year. So I'm hoping that they're going to come in ready for that conversation.
Well, I guess just throwing this out there quickly, I'd like to see something get done so we can help these people. I mean, this committee here, it's been to us twice. We approved it, sent it on to the county board. It gets thrown back to wherever. And at this point, whatever we can do, let's get this ball moving. So anyway, that's my suggestion.
Back in our court, not economic development.
Well, it don't work in our court because we've already did it twice and went to the county board and it gets, no.
With all committees, I don't understand that one.
Yeah,
I think
but Mark,
it's-
it's Economic Development Committee who stopped it at that last full county board meeting. So it's the Economic Development Committee members that need to figure out what they want to move it forward because we couldn't do it here at Public Safety. That's why I motioned for it to go to Economic Development, not our committee. We all know what we want.
We all know.
Us and John Sorolski, but we couldn't get it to go through at the full county board level. That's why I wanted to go to Economic Development, because those 5 board members are the ones who stopped it at the full county board level.
So anyway, but it's Monday, the economic development, and Buck Tussle's gonna be on there. I will attend that meeting just for informational purposes. So anyway, all right, any more? Let's move on here. It's been a long morning. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, update, Andy?
Judge Isham gave you kind of the update on the recovery court. Beyond that, everything's up and running. Good news is Human Services has received 3 grants in the last month and a half to focus on truancy and youth justice issues. That's being run through CJCC as well. We've seen an uptick there. And then there was also a report submitted, and it'll be on the Health and Human Services agenda Tuesday on the opioid funds, the settlements, how much has been used and how much we project getting. And then also the TAG grant was submitted. And then the Youth Justice Point has also received an award from the U.S. Department of Justice to be a part of the Reaching Rural program, which is basically an information exchange. There really isn't any money coming in except the money funds that program, and Justice Point being a part of it for Sawyer County. So that's
Okay, is that it? Anybody got any questions for Andy? All right, number 14, board appointed committees. Anybody have anything? All right, number 15, future agenda items. When you guys gonna meet with on the Round Lake ambulance again, Andy?
don't have a date you want to being noticed on that?
Yeah, and then we'll put it back on the agenda. Okay, all right, thanks. All right, number 16, correspondence reports from conferences and meetings. We were asked, Andy, if we could bring this committee meeting back to 8:30 instead of 9.
It's your committee. You can choose the date and
That's what
time
I
as you
kinda
want.
thought. Are you guys okay with that, or you want to keep it at 9?
I like that extra half.
I guess it's staying at 9.
No, that's fine with me.
No.
You guys got any preference? I mean, you have meetings or anything in the morning you gotta go to?
Well, we'll leave it at 9 then, okay. Sorry, Marshall. Okay, all right, number 17, we have no more business. Thank everybody. We are adjourned.